Coming up on Bridge City News, Lethbridge City Council is looking at adding $50 million to its line of credit to help deal with COVID-19. We have an update as to how many Western Canadian doctors tested positive for the coronavirus following a curling bonspiel in Edmonton. And registered psychologist Graham Bretherick stops by our studio with tips on how to deal with anxiety related to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. There has been a second COVID-19 death in Alberta. This one, a woman in her 80s from Calgary. That brings the total number of fatalities to 2 in our province. The other was a man in his 60s from Edmonton. Alberta now has 57 new cases with 358 total confirmed cases of COVID-19. There are 8 here in the South Zone. Here is some interesting news. Out of the 32,418 completed tests, only 358 came back positive in Alberta, which is around 1%. Alberta's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, offered an update on the Western Canadian doctors who attended a recent curling bonspiel in Edmonton with someone who later tested positive for the coronavirus.
I would like to take this opportunity now to update you on the investigation into the Edmonton bonspiel with Western Canadian physicians and other healthcare workers that occurred March 11th to 14th. All attendees have been contacted and are self-isolating. We have determined that 11 of the 47 Alberta healthcare workers who attended the event have now tested positive for COVID-19. Many of these are physicians. Some of these individuals worked early last week before notification came through of the case associated with the event, and all contacts are being notified as per usual local public health follow-up. Some of these contacts have been patients. I was able to speak with one of the organizers last night who described the measures that were taken to follow guidelines that were in place at the time. Despite these measures, transmission took place, and the key messages that we can take away from this event are: number 1, even mild symptoms, minor sore throat or runny nose, can result in spread of infection. Number 2, commonly touched surfaces, like serving spoons at a buffet, can be a mechanism for spread.
The House of Commons was supposed to sit today to debate the government's $82 billion emergency spending package, but the House was immediately suspended when it returned. The Conservatives are negotiating changes to the Prime Minister's plan for sweeping powers with the legislation. Trudeau is calling on the opposition parties to support measures to provide Canadians struggling with the effects of COVID-19. Trudeau says Ottawa needs to respond as fast as the pandemic.
This legislation will help ensure that Canadians are getting the support they need during these challenging times. No matter who you are, where you live, or what you do, COVID-19 is having a real impact on your life. Passing this bill today means getting you the support you deserve as soon as possible. When you're trying to help get money out to people, speed is of the essence, especially in an unprecedented situation like this one. But I want to make it very clear. I believe in our democratic institutions. All of us in Parliament must work together, and Canadians need to see us doing just that.
Federal Tory leader Andrew Scheer says his MPs will not sign a blank check over to the Liberals to help pass emergency economic measures to help cushion the blow from the coronavirus. Scheer says Conservatives will not give consent the Liberals would need to take massive new taxing and spending powers for the Cabinet without Parliament supervision.
Our hope is that they will stay focused on providing assistance to Canadians, not focused on a power grab, not focused on giving themselves unprecedented new powers. We can be here in 48 hours notice to do exactly what we're doing today, to pass measures to provide that assistance to Canadians. I believe that is, we've shown that good faith. We agreed to the adjournment a few weeks ago. We agreed to grant flexibility to the government in terms of spending. We agreed to come back today. We agreed to a smaller roster to respect the public health concerns. So I believe that Parliament is functioning very well during this time and can continue to do that in the days and weeks ahead.
BC Premier John Horgan says his government has introduced a $5 billion plan to help individuals, businesses, and service organizations to rebuild once the COVID-19 pandemic ends. He says of the $5 billion, the government will spend $1.5 billion on economic recovery initiatives.
So this is stressful, no question about that. But people need help now, businesses need help now, And that's why we're focusing today on announcing our action plan for the economy. In a moment, I'll ask Minister James to go through the details, but the high-level discussion is a $5 billion action plan, $2.8 billion focused on people and services, $2.2 billion focused on businesses and recovery going forward. If we are going to get through this very, very difficult issue for all British Columbians, all Canadians, and indeed all citizens of the world, we have to focus on making sure that the most vulnerable in our community are protected.
Canada's Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Theresa Tam, says an equal number of Canadians who have tested positive for COVID-19 contracted the virus from travel and from transmission within their own communities. Tam says the trend now is turning toward community spread.
In Canada, as of this moment, there are 2,176 cases of COVID-19 and 25 deaths. Earlier today, 220 repatriated passengers from the Grand Princess who were symptom-free at the end of their 14-day quarantine period were released from CFB Trenton. Other passengers who tested positive for the virus will remain until their extended release date, along with their asymptomatic contacts whose quarantine period was reset. We have now tested close to 120,000 people in Canada, averaging about 10,000 people a day. Based on the information available, cases are almost now an equal mix between travelers who were exposed to the virus outside of Canada and their close contact, as well as cases that were exposed in the community setting.
The federal government says Canada is bracing for the possibility that the COVID-19 outbreak in the United States could get a lot worse. Officials say the current travel restrictions at the border will be sufficient for now. Canada is restricting all non-essential cross-border travel. Lethbridge City Council is looking into approving a motion which would increase the city's line of credit from $10 to $60 million to help create a financial buffer against COVID-19. Mayor Chris Spearman said it was imperative in order to maintain operations of the city. While most members of council agreed with Spearman, councillors Joe Morrow and Blaine Hagan agreed and argued that such a move was premature.
Currently, we're in a state of an emergency, and whereas we could still access the funds if needed, and so I just had a concern that if we can still access the funds if needed in this pandemic situation we're in, then why would we need to increase our line of credit from 10 million to 50 million? There could be a lot of people that are going to be taking advantage of putting off their utility payments for 3 months, and that's a large source of income that does come into the city.
The motion to increase the line of credit passed the first couple of times and will go back for a third motion on April the 6th. WestJet says it is laying off half of its employees, around 6,900 workers. Company President Ed Sims says many are receiving their notices of early retirements, early outs, along with voluntary and involuntary leaves. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis, the airline released more than 80% of its contract workforce, brought in a hiring freeze, and stopped non-essential travel and training. WestJet's executive team also took a 50% pay cut, while vice presidents and directors lost around 25% of their pay. Around two-thirds of WestJet's fleet has been grounded, and they're only flying domestically in Canada. Many grocery stores around Alberta are hiring temporary workers to help deal with the strong demand during the COVID-19 pandemic. The head of human resources for Loblaws and Shoppers Drug Mart, Mark Wilson, said that with grocery stores and pharmacies remaining open during this time, Loblaw workers are looking for much-needed relief. Loblaws has launched a webpage to try and recruit temporary workers to help support the stores and distribution centers. A spokesperson for Save On Foods says they are also looking for temporary workers, including clerks, merchandise stockers, and delivery drivers. Safeway is also looking for temporary help, as is Walmart, which announced last week that it is hiring 10,000 workers in Canada during the crisis. Now, as measures are being taken to try and slow the spread of COVID-19, those who work with Canada's homeless are worried about the shelters. As BCN's Loris Alexander explains, they are concerned they may not actually be prepared to handle the virus.
This young man, who doesn't wish for his name to be disclosed, has been on the streets for the past year.
My mom died when I was 7, and my grandma raised me all the way until I was 24, and just last year, she passed away and I was forced to move. I lived there my whole life.
Now, with the world on lockdown, this youngster is one of many who doesn't know what tomorrow will bring.
I'm not coping very well because it's kind of limited me and a lot of people around me as to where we can go and the resources we can take advantage of, you know.
I have support from Arches, huge support from Arches. Anything that I need, want, or could ask for, they are there for me 100%. Bill has been an awesome support and constant reminder that, you know, I do want to get myself sober.
No money to rent a place because the government cuts back, takes away, and steals from you, and then tells you they can't find your files after you work for 50 years.
When asked about the shelter being an option,
You don't even get a blanket in there. You just have to go lay on a mat, and they treat you like poop.
You don't want to be stuck in there where you're not in control of cleaning, so you're living with bugs crawling all over you. What kind of a society is this, man?
still this young man and Carla are hopeful for their future.
My hope for the future is just to be a good guy, to acquire a place, have a family one day.
I'm not here permanently. I don't like living here, but I've experienced it, and so I can have a better understanding going forward, helping somebody else.
For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
Lethbridge College has rolled out a new way of teaching its students online. Chris Hodgson-Bright is an instructor in the Digital Communications and New Media program at the college, and he shared with us what teaching that course to students really looks like.
We transitioned to an online classroom for all the students, and so through that, to engage with our students more in face-to-face environments, we did Zoom conferencing, we've done some work in Discord, hanging out and communicating that way, or through things like Google Hangouts, just so we can see them face-to-face and connect with their assignments and what they have left this semester. With the students, yeah, it's simply clicking a link and joining us online for those courses. So it's pretty easy, it's great, and if they can figure that out, then they're set.
Hodgson-Bright says there may be an opportunity of keeping the online courses in the future, even after the COVID-19 pandemic is over. Lethbridge Hurricane staff and volunteers have come up with a creative way for students to keep learning despite classes being cancelled. Every Tuesday morning, the team will release a new learning booklet featuring a Canes player. The initiative is geared for kids in grades 1 through 7. The booklet will include trivia about their favorite Hurricanes hockey player and incorporate statistics. The goal is to get kids excited about learning through hockey.
We've always heard is that if you're more interested in a topic, it's a lot easier for you to learn. You're more willing to stay focused. You want to learn more about it. So I think drawing in the Hurricanes, the players, their career statistics will help the kids want to learn how the sports broadcaster get their playoff or their career stats over the years.
The Canes are encouraging parents to use the social media hashtag #TeachingTuesday. Now, you know, usually this time of year, the Lethbridge Hurricanes are working on selling playoff tickets and season tickets for the following season. Instead, with the coronavirus cutting the season short, the team will reimburse ticket holders for the 3 remaining home games. The team acknowledges the uncertainty moving forward.
You know, there's just the whole COVID-19 pandemic has put us all into a spin. So right now we also do a lot of budgeting for the upcoming season. This is when we visit a lot of our sponsors and we do renewals for the upcoming season. These are obviously things that we can't do at this point, and we're not exactly sure how that's going to look moving forward. So, you know, we're going to take it one step at a time, 1 week at a time. Hopefully, you know, in a few weeks we can get this back to, you know, some kind of normalcy or whatever that'll look like. I'm not sure. And then we can get back to planning and moving ahead for the next season.
Many season ticket holders are opting to donate the remaining funds for the last 3 games in support of the hockey club. You know, the world has changed with the COVID-19 pandemic. Businesses have closed and more than 1 billion people around the world are being forced to self-isolate. Graham Bretherick is a registered psychologist and president of Run Free Ministries in Lethbridge. Bretherick says during times like these, it is very important to trust God.
If you become worried and anxious, use that as the first signal, I'm not trusting. I'm not really trusting God. My faith has to work for me. If it's not real, what is it really? It's religion.
Catch the full interview with psychologist Graham Bretherick discussing the best ways of dealing with anxiety during the COVID-19 pandemic coming up after business news. A U.S. Navy hospital ship left San Diego for Los Angeles to help the city free up hospital beds. The USS Mercy will take on patients from area hospitals who do not have the coronavirus.
Mercy brings a team of medical professionals, medical equipment, and supplies, all of which will act in essence as a relief valve for local civilian hospitals in the Los Angeles area so that local health professionals could better focus on COVID-19 cases. We are not deploying to treat COVID-19 patients, and are taking proactive measures to ensure anyone coming aboard is properly screened for COVID-19 to mitigate the risk of a case on board.
China is now playing the blame game when it comes to COVID-19. Now that's according to our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari. Daftari says government officials in China are now saying the coronavirus started in the United States and not in China.
Donald Trump will continue to call this the China virus for this reason, because the Chinese, where this virus originated, are rewriting the narrative and calling it an American virus, where they're denying the fact that they started this virus. And you can talk about for many reasons why this virus started, whether it was in a lab, whether this is biological warfare, or if it started by someone messing around with bats, or what people eat, or what people spread.
Catch the entire interview with Lisa as we also discuss how the virus has devastated many countries in Europe. That is coming up in the second half of our show. U.S. President Donald Trump is hoping the coronavirus outbreak will be short-lived. He says he does not want businesses to shut down for months and that the United States will be open for business again very soon.
Our country wasn't built to be shut down. This is not a country that was built for this. It was not built to be shut down. America will again and soon be open for business, very soon, a lot sooner than 3 or 4 months that somebody was suggesting, a lot sooner. We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself. We're not going to let the cure be worse than the problem.
Many sports around the world have shut down. The Western Hockey League announced recently that the 2020 playoffs have been canceled. The NHL, NBA, and many other professional sports leagues have been suspended. Now, golf is a different story. Many golf courses in the United States are still open for business during the coronavirus.
We want to encourage everybody to come out and enjoy some recreational time. So what we've done is taken a few actions. We've lifted the cups about an inch or so above the surface of the putting green. So what that allows people to do is putt until they hit the cup, and then just pick up their golf ball to avoid hitting touching the flagstick. It's a different time right now, so everybody is happy with our moves, and they're just happy to be outside, to be honest with you. So I haven't had any complaints about it yet.
It's definitely a needed distraction, especially with nothing else on at home. I mean, I'm a father of 3 daughters, and my wife and my daughters and I love to watch sports. It's crazy that there is nothing on. So getting out now, being able to really get some fresh air and, chat is a very good thing.
Oh, lipped out. You're outdoors, and you're not near anybody else, and there's only groups of 4, and you're far apart. So we're not touching the pins. The equipment we have is our own equipment. It's not anybody else's equipment.
Not exactly golfing weather in southwestern Alberta. We had some light flurries again today. Lots of clouds, but mild as well. But flurries are on the way tomorrow. A full look at the weather pictures coming up. Cloudy and cooler again today. Tonight, a good chance of flurries developing with a low near -7. Tomorrow, chance of flurries developing again and a high near +1. Thursday, mainly sunny with a high of 8. Friday, sunshine again with a high expected near 9 degrees. And a beautiful weekend is shaping up. Blue sky and sunshine and a high of 11 on Saturday. Just a few clouds and a high of 15 degrees on Sunday. Monday, a mixture of sun and cloud and a high near 9 degrees. Looking at the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 8 degrees and an average low of -5. The highest temperature in the state was recorded in 1999 at 21 degrees, and the record low was -26 in 1955. Sunrise was at 7:25, sunset at 7:50. Looking at tomorrow's national temperatures now, good chance of showers and 12 degrees for Victoria, BC. Some light rain is on tap and 10 degrees for Vancouver. Light flurries and -1 for Calgary on Wednesday. Mainly cloudy and +1 for Edmonton. Overcast and 0 for Regina. Mainly cloudy and -2 for Saskatoon. A mixture of sun and cloud and -4 degrees for Winnipeg tomorrow. Over in the central part of the country, Toronto will be mainly cloudy and 9 degrees. Expect sun mixed with cloud and 7 for both Ottawa and Montreal. In the Maritimes, Fredericton, New Brunswick will be mainly sunny and 6 tomorrow. Clearing at 7 degrees for Halifax, Nova Scotia. Sunshine at 3 for Charlottetown, PEI tomorrow. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect snow and blowing snow on Wednesday and a high of only 0. Union officials say up to 600 Air Canada pilots will soon be on unpaid leave because of the coronavirus pandemic. The Air Canada Pilots Association says it has agreed to that provision and to take a pay cut across the board. The association is joining other unions in calling on Ottawa for financial relief for the aviation industry. Labour and small business representatives say Ottawa's planned wage subsidy for businesses hit hard by COVID-19 is too low to save jobs. The Trudeau government announced a 10% wage subsidy for 90 days. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business wants it increased to 75% because it says businesses will not survive more than a month under the current economic conditions. The United Steelworkers is urging Canada to follow the lead of the UK to raise the wage subsidy to 80%. Precision Drilling is slashing its capital spending in half and moving to reduce fixed costs by 30%. The moves are in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and current market conditions. Cost-cutting measures include laying off workers and cutting salaries of its chief executives. The oilfield services company says it is also reducing its 2020 capital spending plan to $48 million from earlier expectations of $95 million. The coronavirus pandemic has impacted many businesses around the world, including those in the music industry. Moo TV, a concert video production company based in Nashville, Tennessee, is struggling after the abrupt halt of concerts and other live events to prevent the spread of the coronavirus.
Moo TV provides screens, cameras, and video production for concerts on the road. So when you go to Garth Brooks or Jason Aldean or Tame Impala or Chris Stapleton or Hall & Oates or any one of 30 other acts, we are the people that provide the cameras, the screens, and the video production equipment. So we went from projecting a couple of million of income in the near future to zero in under a week. In under a week, we saw everything we had on the books cancel and postpone indefinitely. Like most small businesses, we're looking at probably going into debt significantly in this time period. So we are looking to take advantage of all of the small business loans that have been offered for myself and everybody in the entertainment industry. We're hurting. We're looking at zero income, and we all have huge overhead.
It has been a roller coaster ride for the markets over the past few days. Today, the numbers are up slightly, but yesterday, stocks on Wall Street fell around 3% as U.S. Congress hit another roadblock in talks to inject nearly $2 trillion into the coronavirus-weakened economy.
It's a white-knuckle market with the coronavirus pandemic, and really adding gasoline to the bonfire is what we're seeing in D.C. play out, that ultimately the passage of this bill is needed to calm some of the fears. You want to get checks in the hands of families that need it today or yesterday. And as this continues to not get done because of some of the issues and almost comedy that we're seeing in the Beltway, investors are really throwing in the white towel. And right now, as an investor, you're grasping onto straws. And there's just no good news. And as the bad news continues to accelerate, that's why you're going to continue to see red in stocks. And I do believe we're starting to get to some, or at least close to some sort of bottom. But I think we could still see another 5 to 10% down before we get there.
Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 1,342 points in the day to 12,571. The Dow was up 2,112 points to 20,704. The S&P 500 was up 209 points to 2447, and the Nasdaq was up 557 points in the day to 7417. Oil was up 86 cents to 24.22 a barrel. Natural gas was up 8 cents to $1.68. Gold was down $6.03 to $16.2629 an ounce, and silver was up a cent to $14.29 an ounce. Wheat is at $230 per metric ton. Barley's at $230 per metric ton. Canola's at $4.56, and corn is at $259 per metric ton. Live cattle were up $4.50 to $106.15. Feeder cattle were up $5 to $130.73, and lean hogs were up $1.85 to $67.70. The Canadian dollar was up slightly on the day to $69.15 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Lethbridge City Council is looking into approving a motion that would increase the city's line of credit from $10 to $60 million to help create a financial buffer against COVID-19. Mayor Chris Spearman said it was imperative in order to maintain operations of the city. The motion to increase the line of credit passed the first couple of votes and will go back for third motion on April the 6th. The death toll is mounting as many countries in Europe are struggling to keep ahead of the COVID-19 virus. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will have details next. The Canadian death toll from the coronavirus outbreak jumped by more than 50% recently. There are now more than 1,400 people infected with COVID-19. There are coronavirus cases in all 10 provinces. Meanwhile, COVID-19, or the novel coronavirus cases around the world, has now topped 300,000. One of the hardest hit regions lately is no longer China, but Italy. To talk about this more in detail is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, why was Italy hit so hard by the coronavirus?
Yes, there's a couple of reasons why Italy was so hard hit. Obviously they're not equipped to deal with the number of cases that they've been hit with, but it seems as though, first of all, people live very close to one another, especially in the areas that it did hit. As you know, Europe is very different from Canada or the United States, where there's a bit more space. If you've ever been to Europe and you've traveled around, you see that, especially in Italy, in the places where it's hit. Not only do the people live in close proximity to one another, but there is an older, the population is much older, whether it's people who are retiring there or people from all over Europe that are traveling there, or it might just be their second home, their vacation homes that they were frequenting when they were hit with the virus. The second reason is because by the time it hit, they did not have enough of a warning. They do not have the ventilators, they don't have the hospital beds, they don't have the manpower to fight this virus. There was a doctor from Israel who was in Italy helping to treat some of these Italian patients, and he said, we no longer even look at the patients who are over 60 years old. That's just to say that they don't have that much of a chance. I mean, if they do, they want to gear their attention towards those who are younger and actually have a chance at fighting this horrific virus. So Italy has been very, very hard hit. The number, they're exponentially growing, whereas somewhere like South Korea, they flattened the curve right away. In Italy, that curve is still growing, and it is exponentially, as I said, the number of deaths exponentially growing every single day.
Yeah, and the Italian government is now banning any movement inside the country as the death toll has now risen to over 5,500. Now, Lisa, staying in Europe, Spain has moved to extend its state of emergency as the virus deaths are soaring in that country.
Yes, so in the past few days, they also saw exponential growth in the number of cases and the number of deaths, and of course, in their ability to tend to all of these patients. Look, the crazy thing about this virus, Helen, as you may know, is that the latency period is so long, and in a place like Europe, where people are traveling between countries and traveling across borders and traveling for work and traveling for vacation, they've spread this virus to many people before they even start showing any symptoms. And even when they do start showing symptoms, oftentimes those symptoms are very, very mild symptoms. So, of course, it has a very different effect on different people, depending on your age, your gender even, your genetic composition, where you are, how you're dealing with it, your family, how well you're quarantining, when you're, how much you're moving about. As you said, in Italy, they have banned movement within the country, because once they put down martial law, or I call it martial law, but the stay at home or stay quarantined kind of ban, people started moving within the country. They went into places that are more comfortable, the countryside, etc. But they were spreading the virus as they were moving. So it's very important when they say stay in place. It means stay in place. It doesn't mean to go to your aunt's house or your cousin's house or whoever just to have more comfort or more space. It literally means to stay home. And I think people need to remember that right now.
Lisa, let's talk about the number of coronavirus patients in Israel. It's passing over 1,000 now, as 126 more people have been diagnosed recently.
Yes, so Israel has had, I should say, the issue of many people traveling. It's very common in Israel. It's a small country, the size of New Jersey, but people are traveling all the time, so coming in and out, and they also get a lot of tourists in and out of the country. But many countries are looking to Israel as an example of how to deal with this virus in a very, very extreme, some would say, but effective way. Anyone coming into the country, whether you were traveling abroad and coming home or traveling to Israel for pleasure, are quarantined for 14 days, not allowed to mix with the population for 14 days. And for the people who live there, the natives, they're not allowed to be out and about. I actually saw arrests happening on the streets when people were not abiding by the quarantine laws. So, I think they're being very, very, very diligent in order to keep this virus from spreading. Again, a small country, people are living in very close quarters. It's like Manhattan, Tel Aviv and other cities like that. It's very, very population dense. And for that reason, they need to be very extreme in taking the precautions that they're taking.
How close are we getting to seeing a vaccine coming out of either Israel or where you are in the United States?
Yeah, so every day we're hearing that they're getting closer and closer. They've tried different combinations of things. A lot of people are talking about the malaria medication being something that could potentially work down the line. Nothing is out yet. We were hearing that it was 16 to 18 months away. I think we might be a bit closer at this point. Look, I think as soon as they come up with something, people are going to be so desperate to actually have the trials on real actual patients that probably have a lower lower expectancy to live. So I think once we have something, people will be very enthused to have it tried out. And I think this Dr. Fauci, a lot of people are looking to him as the foremost expert. I was listening to an interview with him last night, and he says that they're being extremely hopeful and diligent to get something out on the market as soon as possible.
There are recent reports as well saying that there's been a 30% jump of coronavirus cases in Panama.
Yes, Panama is another import-export city where the ports are open, people are coming in and out all the time, doing business, whether it's in the United States or in China or elsewhere. So it's no surprise that has happened. Now, Panama will probably risk being one of the countries that are not as well equipped to deal with this. Panama, parts of it are extremely, extremely urban. They have the manpower, they have the money, they have, again, the imports, exports coming in and out of the country, and other parts of it are extremely rural and will have difficulty getting the ventilators and getting the help and getting the experts and the doctors that they need. So, our eyes are on all the countries. At Foreign Desk, I think we not only do a report on our website, but our daily email keeps an eye on all the nations and the countries that are really we're looking at in terms of the highest rate of cases and of deaths, unfortunately.
Lisa, several countries in Africa are now confirming coronavirus cases as well.
Yes, so in places where we were not hearing of the spread of this virus, they are now spreading. Again, Hal, you and I spoke about this for a while. This has been on the map since November, or potentially before that, but we've been hearing about it since November. So think about all the travel, all the flights, all the different places where people go to and come from. And that's where it spread. And again, because the latency period is so long, because it manifests itself so differently in different age groups and different genetic groups in different parts of the world, we are hearing just now of how it's spreading to all of these different continents, all places on the map. I know in Canada, you guys had a 50% jump over the weekend. So it's obviously something to keep an eye on. I think in places where the cases are jumping so quickly and spreading so quickly, those are the places where we're keeping our eyes on most, because we don't want it to get any worse. Now, remember, when we say that there are 300,000 cases reported worldwide, that number is probably 3 or 4-fold bigger than it actually is. Many people are staying at home with symptoms. Thankfully, if they're not in need of hospital care, then they should stay home. I know a lot of people here in the United States were going crazy. They need to be tested. They need to be tested. If your symptoms are mild, you can stay home. You can stay home and keep someone else from getting that virus and who might not be able to handle it as well. So again, that number is probably much higher, but thankfully we're dealing with many people in different parts of the world that can handle it.
Let's make our way over to India now. 1.3 billion people there have been put under an anti-coronavirus people's curfew. What does that look like?
There's so many people in India, and so many people so far have said, well, it's quite surprising that it hasn't spread like wildfire there. Look, they're taking the preemptive measures so that it doesn't spread there. It can go everywhere. It has gone everywhere. Why wouldn't it go to India? Again, you have a very large import-export community there. You have a lot of tourism there. of course it could spread very easily. So, when you have a curfew or you allow people to only come in and out at different hours, I know here in the United States, many supermarkets have certain hours where the elderly can come and shop so that other people who can affect them, because as you know, this is obviously so much more sensitive in older people above 60, or some people say 70. When you have a curfew for a large population like that, you almost are enforcing the social distancing to the best of your ability. Now, if only people would listen to it and not act cavalier and head out to the streets and to the supermarkets and to wherever they can go.
Lisa, U.S. Senator Rand Paul has tested positive for the coronavirus, as has German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and even opera superstar Placido Domingo. The virus is going after everyone.
Well, Angela Merkel, I'm not sure if she's been diagnosed yet, if she had a positive test, or if she's just self-quarantining because she was around people who did have it. But regardless, you make a very good point here in that no one is immune to this, right? So we have people in Hollywood, people in Washington, D.C., people, Trudeau's wife, I know, has it and is self-quarantining, Tom Hanks. So a lot of big names here. It only goes to show that no one can stay away from this virus. It just shows that we must take precautions from this spreading any further. We're looking at people who cannot travel to loved ones' funerals. I know someone in the community here was not able to travel to the UK, where his mother is. His mother was 60 years old, had no symptoms, got the virus, and unfortunately passed away. Now he cannot attend the funeral. We're having weddings, funerals, all sorts of important life ceremonies via Zoom and Skype and FaceTime, and it's crazy. It's truly crazy. It's almost like a bad movie that we're watching, but this is the reality that we're all forced to live. And as you said, it's on all continents, and I think all kinds of people. This has become the normalizer, right? The thing that makes everybody the same in some capacity. We're all going back to the basics. We're all taking that neighborhood walk because it's the only place we can go. We're all practicing self-quarantining, and we just hope that in 2 weeks we're talking about better things, Hal.
An Australian truck carrying toilet paper, Lisa, caught fire. I understand now why there's such a toilet paper shortage around the world.
Right. I don't know if you're following any of these very, very distracting and very appreciated memes that are going around, whether it's about toilet paper, about self-quarantining, or about day drinking, or whatever it may be. But yes, this is the commodity these days is toilet paper, and I still have not figured out why. But really, on a more serious note, I ask everybody to stop hoarding. You don't need to hoard. My sister is an MD. She's a resident, actually, at a California hospital, and she just texted me right before we got on air that she's working without gloves in her clinic today because someone stole the boxes of gloves that the doctors have. I mean, she's putting herself really not only on the front line in terms of a doctor, but really in the front lines because people with the virus are coming to the hospital and they are forced to work without gloves, without masks, because people who should stay at home are hoarding these essential items. And it's just wrong. I mean, come on, people, let's get to a place where we're logical, where we're humane, and we're not hoarding, where we're helping each other get through this very difficult time.
And Lisa, China is doing a lot of damage control and rewriting the coronavirus narrative to distract from mistakes made at home.
Yes, so Donald Trump will continue to call this the China virus for this reason, because the Chinese, where this virus originated, are rewriting the narrative and calling it an American virus, where they're denying the fact that they started this virus. And you can talk about for many reasons why this virus started, whether it was in a lab, where this is biological warfare, or if it started by someone messing around with bats, or what people eat, or what people spread. Regardless, this started in Wuhan, China. This is where we started reporting about it. I know at the Foreign Desk we had our first stories about this very mysterious virus. I think you and I talked about it, Hal, on air here months ago. I think it was in November, and it continues. So imagine the Chinese being secretive or rewriting history. It's not the first time. It's very, very dangerous. It's it costs lives around the world because they were not straightforward about what was happening, about how serious this virus was. I mean, we closed our borders here in the United States. I mean, many people called Donald Trump out for it. They called him xenophobic, and now they're saying that he didn't work fast enough. I mean, look, regardless, this is not a time to be politically correct. This is a time to be factual. This is a time where we must get down to the basics. We must get down to the facts because lives literally count on it.
Yeah, and find a vaccine sooner rather than later. Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, stay safe.
You too. Thank you.
The world has changed with the onset of the coronavirus pandemic. The response to this has really varied from country to country, but it seems the most common response is a high degree of anxiety and worry. Joining me now to talk about it in studio is Graham Bretherick, a registered psychologist, president of Run Free Ministries in Lethbridge, also author of The Fear Shift, Dominated by Fear No More, available at runfreecounseling.com. Graham, welcome back to BCN.
Thank you for inviting me, Hal. Good to be here.
You bet. Now let's talk about COVID-19. A lot of people are impacted by this around the world. Here in Lethbridge, I mean, we have some cases here as well. When was the last time you saw the level of anxiety and fear so high?
Well, I don't think I've ever seen it so high as this. I mean, I'm just a little over 70, and I don't know that I've ever seen it in all of the things we've been through. I mean, I wasn't around when World War I, World War II were obviously, but I have not seen it this high in a long time, maybe ever.
That's incredible. Yeah. Now, what is the difference between fear and simply really being concerned about something?
Well, no, let me step back. Fear actually has two sides to it. There's positive side of fear, and it's basically a good thing. Without fear, you'd get killed walking across the highway. Without fear, you could get, all kinds of problems. So we need fear to warn us. So fear basically works as a warning signal. However, the fear of fear, which is what I see going on now, I call negative fear, that fear is quite different because we get overwhelmed by the fear.
Okay, how about anxiety?
Well, anxiety is just repressed fear. So if you keep pushing the fear, I don't want to think about it, I don't want to think about it, I don't want to think about it, you push it down, that's what anxiety is.
Some people say maybe the media is paying a little too much attention to COVID-19. But at the same time, the world is taking notice. Right. Thousands of people dying in Italy, not just in China. Right. It's rampant around the world right now. Yes. So we want to be concerned. But is there a point in time when we're going beyond staying informed and maybe pushing negativity?
Yeah. Let me just say this. The positive fear is really faith. All right, that if you look at what it is, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So we need wisdom. That's really an expression of faith. But if you think about what negative fear is, it's really be controlled by the fear of fear. So it depends what you focus on. So I just say this, that faith really has to do with focus. What are you focused on? So if you focus on the television, you focus on all the bad reports and constantly get that, and that's all you're getting, you're going to be fearful and you're going to be overwhelmed by it and you're going to become quite anxious.
With Bridge City News, we also like to include some good stories. When it comes to COVID-19, like there are different volunteer groups in Canada and the United States, they're helping even Holocaust survivors who are shut in their homes and making meals and bringing them meals. So it's nice to see the good things that humanity is doing at the same time, right? And that's pretty important, isn't it?
Yes. Well, you think back to some of the Jewish people who held people in their homes at the danger of their lives. And so why did they do it? Because they believed it was the right thing to do. They had a faith and believed in it was the right thing to do. But they took their lives in their hands in one sense, because if they got caught, they were dead. So I love the fear that turns into a positive thing, and we do good things because we're not afraid of being overwhelmed by what's happening around us.
Some people like to get their news sources as well from social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so forth. Can we spend maybe too much time on social media that may impact our own psyche?
Well, I think we can, yeah. And again, it's focus. What are you focused on? So if all you read is all the negative stuff, then that starts to overwhelm you. Your emotional system can't actually handle that. You need to put a focus on some good things, some positive things.
Some structure.
Yes.
It's funny because a lot of times we give our kids a certain amount of hours that they can spend maybe on their computers or on social media. Maybe we should do the same for ourselves, discipline ourselves, right?
Well, I watch the news because I want to be alert. I want to keep it.
You're watching Bridge City News to see what's going on.
I am watching the news. I watch Bridge City News.
That's right. That's awesome.
But I'm also reading my Bible. And I'm also declaring Psalm 91 over my family and over my every day when my wife and I share communion together and we pray together, where we read Psalm 91 over us and make that as a declaration. So I'm not living in the fear that I'm going to get COVID-19.
I think it's natural to get scared. A lot of us get scared
Yeah.
for whatever happens, right?
Fear is natural.
So fear will come, but how can we really shift that fear into faith? That trusting God will provide and protect and watch over us?
Just what I've said is that if you don't worship the God who's over all of this, see, worship is a real help that way. And so is reading our Bibles, so is meditating, so is talking with other Christians who have enough faith. So I've been encouraging people in their faith. All right, so that's what I keep doing because what are we focused on again? I come back to it. What are we focused on?
A lot of people are concerned as well with COVID-19, the coronavirus, the novel coronavirus,
Sure.
that it's going to impact a lot of those who already have compromised immune systems,
Right.
such as our parents and our grandparents. How do we put some of those fears at ease? Because we're really worried about the elderly.
Right. Well, and I think that's the positive side of fear. Be alert. Be smart. Be aware that if you're in your 80s, you're going to be more vulnerable than if you're in your 40s or 30s, et cetera. But that focus is a good focus because then we're being smart. Like I think it's good to be careful with how much we're connecting with people. That's smart. But I'm not going to be afraid to go out in public because that would then control me. My fear then controls me. And I don't want that to happen. I want my faith to control me.
Graham, what do you say to people who've lost their jobs because of COVID-19? My daughter's one of them. She was working as a line cook in Ontario. Her restaurant shut down. A lot of people are fearful they're going to lose their jobs. And how are they going to pay their bills? Their rent, their food, or mortgage payments?
Well, again, let me take you back to if God is my provider, and therefore He's going to make provision in these difficult times. I understand the fear. I understand we have to be alert to, and I understand that when we lose our job, we have to start thinking about what we're going to do. But at the same time, I've been through times when we haven't had much money. And so what did I do? Did I get fearful? Sometimes yes. Or did I go back and I say, wait a minute now, who's my provider? Am I my own provider or is God my provider? And that's what carried me through. And I shifted my faith again and said, Father, you are my provider. I'm trusting you through this.
You know, sometimes people sit down, and I'm guilty of this myself sometimes. You get on your knees and you pray to your Heavenly Father. He'll provide and protect, and you'll leave it at the foot of the cross.
Right.
Then you get right back up and you take those worries right back from God, right?
Yes, I know.
So how do you get into practice of just leaving those problems at the cross?
Well, I mean, because I think we need constant reminders. We're slow learners, all right? So just constant reminders. Every day, that's what I say, my wife and I are choosing to have communion every day as the focus on the cross. That's what we're doing. And we're just simply saying, you're our protector, you're our provider, you're our peace, and we're going to operate in that. And we need that reminder because it's easy to shift back, whoops, everything else is very frightful out here. So I'm just keeping my focus here. I'm not unaware, I'm not naive about this, but I'm keeping my focus here.
A lot of people as well, Graham, are quite concerned about, the consequences of the anxiousness, maybe being sleepless,
right?
Maybe getting stressed out to the point that you have an ulcer perhaps.
Right.
So physiologically speaking, how can you control the anxiousness to the point where you don't make yourself sick?
Well, I think what we probably have to do is talk about it. Like anxiety usually happens because we push it down and we keep it quiet, we don't talk to anybody. It is much better to talk about it, but we're ashamed of our anxiety. We are ashamed of our fear focus. And so we just keep it quiet, and then what happens is it's turmoil inside of us. It's much better to sit down with someone and say, look, I'm afraid. All right, let's talk about it. Let's work it through. Let's pray it through. Let me help you change the focus, which is what we're doing in counseling. We're helping people shift the focus.
How about shift the focus onto something else, like working on a vehicle, doing some gardening perhaps? Springtime now?
It's a bit premature for gardening.
Well,
but when we come to it,
right?
That's true. I think
like
that's
hobbies,
good.
Right?
Yes, I think that's a good thing to do, as long as that's not an escapism. Like I say, here's what I sense: people are way more full of fear than they realize, and so they push it down, and then something like this comes along, and all of a sudden, whoop, all this stuff comes to the surface. So what I want to do then is learn how to walk this out and work this through, so that I actually gain mental health or emotional health through this process.
Do you think as well maybe COVID-19 is a good test of our own faith?
It is.
And our relationship with God?
I'm saying these days, how real is your faith? Does it work for you or is it religious? In other words, it works on a Sunday morning. I go and I do my Sunday morning thing and I come back, and then the next day on Monday I'm back to living in worry and fear. By the way, if you're worrying, you're not trusting. If you're anxious, you're not trusting. Those are good signals. If I'm anxious, if I'm worrying, I'm not trusting. I'm not trusting God. So then I can confess that. That's one of the things I'm saying to people. Then just confess it. I'm worried, which means I'm not trusting. I repent. That is, I change my thinking from worrying, I'm going to solve my own problems, to being able to say, I trust you, Father. You are my provider. You're my protector. You're my peace.
How important is it then to really meditate on His Word?
Very important. I do it every day because I can't.
Does that give you that peace that you need then, right?
It does. It does for me. And I realize that sometimes when I'm dealing with counseling and people are quite anxious, I have to keep myself focused back for their sake and my sake on what I really believe. What do I really believe? So I'm reading the Bible with that in mind. Psalm 91, again, I just read that before. That's a really good one. But the other day I was reading in Nehemiah chapter 1 and 2 in my Bible reading, and Nehemiah has to go before the king. If he says the wrong things, off with his head. So he approaches this with prayer, and then he puts action to his prayer, and then tells the king what's going on. Basically, the king says, why are you so down? Why is your face sad? Now, you're not allowed to be in the king's presence and have a sad face, apparently, in those days. But he did it, took a risk, and then God gave an option to be able to tell the king what was going on. His heart was heavy for Jerusalem, etc. But that he faced his fears.
As human beings, do you think we have a tendency to put more faith in our consequences rather than in trusting in God?
Oh, yes.
In that relationship?
Oh, yeah. It's the natural thing is to get focused on the world that I live in and the environment I live in. That's
and woe is me sometimes, a pity party, right?
Yeah, and pity really is a form of pride. You know, that self-pity is a form of pride. So if I'm focused on myself, I'm not walking in humility. And humility basically is saying, I trust you, Father. I trust you to take care of me during these times. These are actually not bad times. From my point of view, they're actually, I'm not being naive when I say that. There's lots going on. But it's great opportunity in the kingdom of God to advance the kingdom of God and say to people, where's your faith? Let me help you with it. Let me come alongside you.
How important is it then, Graham, to really focus on things we should be thankful for?
I like that. I think that's really good because otherwise you get into a negativity. So look, I've got this to be thankful, this, and you put it helps change the focus, helps change where you
count your blessings, right?
Name them one by one. That's right, the old hymn says, yeah. So it's good, we should be doing that. And we should be encouraging one another along the line, you know, because I know people, I talked to someone the other day who was really quite fearful. And I just said, let me just put a little different shift. And as I did, in about 15 minutes, that person has shifted from a fear focus to a faith focus.
How can we really help our children deal with anxiety?
Talk about it. Worst thing you can do is just be anxious. They pick it up. They sense that. So I just say, talk to your children. Open it up. Are you worried about something? Are you concerned about this? It depends on the age of the child. But I say, what are you worried about? Let's talk about it. That's one of the ways we shift from letting it control us because we push it down. Because often, again, we feel ashamed, which is hiding. We feel ashamed of our fear. I shouldn't be afraid. I shouldn't be afraid. But fear is a natural emotion. But I just not get caught in it. I don't want to get trapped by it.
I know a lot of times as well as a man, I can be fearful of a situation that I have no control over.
Right.
You know, because a lot of men, it's like we want to be able to control certain things and help our families the best we can. We want to problem solve, get it right in there. But sometimes you can't, and that's what's really difficult, and that can create more anxiousness.
Right.
Right?
Well, we like to stay in control. All of us do. I'm no different than anyone else. I like to stay in control. But I have to realize, basically, I worship a God who's controlling everything. The coronavirus has not caught God off guard. He's not shocked by it. Now, he didn't create it, but he's not caught off guard by it. So then I go back to God, all right, how do I handle in this time? How do I walk this out with faith? How do I become a positive influence instead of a negative influence?
Some people would ask as well, Graham, perhaps non-believers, why would God, your God, allow something like this to happen, to take so many innocent lives? COVID-19.
Well, yeah, it's not like he allows it to happen. It's the result of a sinful world we live in and all the fear and all the anxiety and all the greed and all the stuff that's going on around us. I mean, that's a result of a fallen world. But God always says, I can turn all things from evil into good. So, you know, that's what Romans 8:28 basically, we go back to that. God causes all things to work together for good to those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And that's my faith stand. I keep my focus on Jesus.
So Graham, some closing thoughts on a message you want to deliver to seniors who are watching, families who are watching, who are impacted by COVID-19 and are concerned about the novel coronavirus.
Right, well, I'm a senior. right? And have been for quite a number of years, so I understand that. But again, I would say to seniors, if you become worried and anxious, use that as the first signal. I'm not trusting. I'm not really trusting God. My faith has to work for me. If it's not real, what is it really? It's religion. And I'm not into religion. I'm into reality.
A relationship.
A relationship with Jesus Christ. And if it doesn't work for me, why am I doing it?
Graham Bretherick, registered psychologist, president of Run Free Ministries in Lethbridge, and author of The Fear Shift, Dominated by Fear No More. Thanks a lot for joining me today in studio.
You're welcome, Hal. It's a joy and a pleasure.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.